Good morning, everybody. My name is Patty Torsney, and I am the permanent observer for the Inter-Parliamentary Union to the United Nations. This series of briefings that my colleague Alessandro Mater, who's on here as well, have designed is to help parliamentarians engage with the UN and particularly to become more aware of some of the issues and to fulfill their responsibilities around oversight of their governments, and in this case, around decisions and processes that they are undertaking at the United Nations. For some 30 years, the IPU has been campaigning to have more women in parliaments, and we have done that by collecting the data and producing documents which help people understand where the action is at. And we have, as a committee, decided to take on certain campaigns. And one of the campaigns is around making sure that the General Assembly, particularly at the United Nations, is more gender equal. So we're very pleased that we are going to have two people enlighten us on this topic and to also hear from the chair of the IPU Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs, Senator Andries Gifroy, who's with us today from Belgium. And we're going to hear from Ambassador Stova, who's the permanent representative of Bulgaria at the United Nations after quite a career in the Foreign Service for her country. And we're going to hear from Susanna Malcora, who's in this iteration of her career, the founder of Global Women Leaders Voices for Change and Inclusion. She's a former foreign minister of Argentina, and I first got to know her when she was the chief of staff to the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. We're going to open this with brief comments from each of the three speakers, and then to open up the opportunity for all of the members of parliament here to ask some questions, brief 1 to 2 minute questions or make comments, and then to hear back from the speakers in response. And we will finish all of this within 1 hour. So without further ado, Senator Gifroy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And hello to all colleagues. Good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to this briefing on the 24%. And we are not talking about the global average gender pay gap, which by coincidence is about the same percentage, but about the 24% of women permanent representatives in the United Nations General Assembly. Exactly the General Assembly of the organization that wants to be the global community to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, amongst which them is also SDG 5, the gender equality. During the last assembly of the IPU in Bahrain, the Standing Committee on the United Nations Affairs, of which I am now the acting chair, embarked on an initiative to advance gender equality in the United Nations General Assembly. And members reviewed data on the current number of male and female permanent representatives, addressed national appointment processes, and considered how they might advance the discussion in their own parliaments. Personally, I'm not a specialist, so I leave it to our experts to give us insights into the causes underlying this imbalance and to put forward possible solutions. But I would like to go through some numbers with you. According to a report published by Politico Playbook and from 27 October in 2020, no more than 1 in 4 ambassadors in the EU is a woman. The report also shows that there are big differences between EU member states in this regard. For example, Sweden, Estonia, and Finland were each only a few percentage points away from equal representation of male and female ambassadors. While at the bottom of the list, only 10% of Belgian and Czech ambassadors were women. My own country, Belgium, is among the worst students in the class in terms of equality on the ambassador's level. In the meantime, according to the Women in Diplomacy Index 2022, Canada and Sweden have reached the 50% goal, and according to Security Montenegro, Montenegro have even overachieved it in 2021 with almost 53%. At the other end of the spectrum, some countries still not even reach 5%. I was also wondering to which extent this low representation of women is due to the presence of women in foreign career positions in general. In my country, 30% of the external career positions for diplomats are being filled by women. Thus, if that ratio were respected, we should have 3 times more female ambassadors than the 10% we currently have. And this being said, according to a briefing from the European Parliamentary Research Service from March 2021, in every single G20 country, the ratio of female diplomats was higher than the rate of the female ambassadors. For the global rate of female ambassadors, I can refer to the Women in Diplomacy Index 2022. Again, the total share of women ambassadors stood at 20.6% for 2022, a slight improvement from the 20.7% shared in 2021 and the 16% in 2018 for these G20 states. The 24% of women ambassadors to the United Nations is perfectly in line with the number of the 20.1% of women ambassadors globally. It's even a little bit less dramatic, you can say. But as mentioned before, we are talking about an organization that wants the global community to realize the SDGs by 2030. The flyer for this briefing states correctly that unlike parliaments around the world, where there is a discussion and awareness of the need for greater representation of women, there is no concerted effort among United Nations member states to ensure that more women ambassadors, permanent representatives, how we call that, sit in the General Assembly to the so-called Parliament of the world. Nevertheless, if you look at the global percentage of women MPs in April 2023 on the IPU website, we see that it's only 26.5% as well. And based on the calculation of the United Nations and security, it will take 30 to 35 to 40 years to reach full global gender equality in Parliament at the current pace. I don't know whether this is also valid for the female ambassadors, but I guess it will be close. It will be a close call. Moreover, during the IPU Assembly Bahrain back in March, 24% of the delegations were single gender, and only 27.2% could be considered gender balanced. It means 40–60% each gender is represented. And if we talk about MPs, there I have to say that fortunately, our parliament, our Flemish parliament, there we reach about 50–50%, and 3 of the 6 parliaments in Belgium has a female as chair of the parliament. So despite the dramatic figures regarding the share of female ambassadors, I have to say that in general, I'm not a big fan of applying quota. I think we should always start from the principle of the best person in the best place, regardless of gender, but everyone should have the same opportunities. And this means that female diplomats should get the same long-term career coaching, the same opportunities to work in the most prestigious diplomatic offices and the most valued positions. Moreover, governments or other authorities appointing candidates for high-level positions should always be given the choice between as many female as male candidates. I am one of the senators appointed by the Flemish Parliament, and I can confirm that the principle of the mandatory choice between as many female as male candidates is always applied by the Flemish government. And this system doesn't automatically lead to a perfect gender balance, but it is politically feasible. And I know female candidates who successfully ran for office who told me that they would not have run for office if the mandatory choice between a female and a male candidate had not existed. In my opinion, the role of MPs in this is mainly to put pressure on the government to achieve full gender equality, with representation at the UN, United Nations, being a powerful symbolic starting point. And therefore, I would like to ask you to fully support the campaign for a gender equal General Assembly led by the IPU Standing Committee on the United Nations Affairs in order to build on the resolution 76/269 proclaiming from the 24th June the International Day of Women in Diplomacy in order to reach the ultimate goal. As MPs, We can hold hearings with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We can regularly ask questions. We can vote resolutions calling for a more gender-sensitive appointment process. And this will remain a recurrent item during the meetings of our Standing Committee on the United Nations Affairs. We will keep track of the number of women in the General Assembly, and we will keep on asking parliaments to inform us about the initiatives they have taken in order to improve the gender balance in the General Assembly, which will also allow us to learn from each other. And in this regard, I'm looking forward to hear about your experiences and initiatives during this briefing. I thank you very much for your attention and very much also for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. It's always good to have an engineer in the crowd to keep all those numbers there. And the IPU had done some survey before our Manama Assembly that you referenced, where we determined that of the parliaments that answered our survey, that only about 28% of parliaments had some oversight over that appointment process. So it'll be very interesting when we hear from Ambassador Malcora about her role as a foreign minister, particularly in that process. But we do know that there are some terrific women there, and a great model of a fantastic ambassador is, of course, Ambassador Stova, who has been in her position for a couple of years now, I think during COVID. But you have a lot of experience around the UN, and we're looking forward to hearing your comments on what can be done to make sure that we have a gender equal General Assembly, and also what differences it would make if there were more women in those positions.
Thanks for organizing this discussion. It's extremely interesting. And when I was trying to put some thoughts together this morning, I found it quite hard, actually. First of all, it's great to be here with Susanna Malcora, who is a role model for a lot of us at the global level at the UN. So a pleasure and an honor to be sharing sort of the panel with her. Gender equal General Assembly. It is a hard question because, as we know, the General Assembly consists of member states, and member states appoint their ambassadors. It's a national process, exclusively national competence. So it very much depends on the countries. When I joined as ambassador in February 2021, the UN had reached an all-time high of women ambassadors. There were about 54 at that time. Now we're down to 43, I think, but certainly in the lower 40s. So this means that at least 11, 12 countries have made the conscious choice of reappointing somebody else that's no longer a woman, which is fine. However, it's difficult to do anything at the GA level to ensure better representation. What countries have to aim at is to ensure national processes that secure equal access of women to diplomacy and to higher ranking positions, of course. In my own country, parliaments have little to do with the appointment of ambassadors, if nothing, I would say. The process is as follows. The foreign minister proposes to the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers then takes a decision, which is presenting a nomination to the president, and then it's the president who appoints the ambassadors with a decree. While we do not have a formal hearing by the parliament, it has become customary that ambassadors, newly appointed ambassadors, go and present their priorities to the Foreign Policy Committee. But this is after their appointment, not before that. So the parliament does not really have a particular role in our process. In other systems, I'm aware that, and of course, the United States is such an example, is where the hearings are quite decisive in the appointment process. In our case, this is not the case. However, I'm also lucky to be coming from a country where we have quite strong representation of women in all spheres of life. Bulgaria is doing quite well in terms of CEOs, in science and technology, in terms of, we used to be quite well positioned in the parliament. I haven't looked at the new statistic. We have elections every couple of months, so it's hard to follow at the moment the new composition of the parliament, unfortunately. But this is also what the General Assembly can do. I think that collectively we have tried to make the organization, and that is a lot of demand on the side of the Secretariat, and here Susanna Malcora can talk more about, on making the Secretariat gender equal and achieve gender parity. And the current term of the Secretary General has yielded quite a lot of significant results. The member states have not replicated that in terms of women ambassadors. I think that gender equality would be good for the GA simply because, as we know, half of the humanity is female. So unless we all participate equally, it's difficult to have the responses that are tailored for the needs of the humanity per se. We cannot find solutions unless part of it is underrepresented and misrepresented. And we have, of course, the different perspective to the solution and finding solutions, different approaches, etc. But it's simply because it's a matter of representation and inclusivity, of course. And again, the GA per se is the recipient of the decisions of member states. So we see what member states sent there. That's why parliaments, in my opinion, have a role to play at national level. And even if they're not included in the formal decision making on appointments, they can still require, in our case, it's an oversight that's being exercised on the government, so they can ask questions on the process, they can be more inquisitive, more demanding, also on the processes for the entry level of diplomacy. If you look at my mission, we are the other way around. We are currently 7 diplomats, including myself, and out of these 7 diplomats, 5 are women. My deputy is a woman, most of my other diplomats as well. So that's not very representative. And it's also not extremely good. I'm not saying that it's bad. On the contrary, all my colleagues are extremely good professionals, but we're talking about equality. So it's necessary to have some sort of balance there. We need to find it. It's an exception. I wouldn't say that this is the rule at all. As well, even though we have quite a number of women ambassadors, we still are women ambassadors are less than male ambassadors in Bulgaria. Same goes for the high posts, high level posts at the ministry itself. So there is a lot to do. While we have a lot of women at the entry level, at the high post director general, deputy ministers, we have fewer women. Of course, at the moment we have 2 deputies. One is a woman, the other is a man. So there is a gender balance there. But the parliaments can demand more from, and having the legislative power, you can initiate not quotas, but at least opportunities for equal entry level, and then which would allow for qualified candidates to enter the system and then grow.
Terrific, Ambassador Stova. I think you've given a mandate to some of the people on this briefing, and certainly being elected president of the ECOSOC is a very huge achievement, and you're achieving good things there as well and leading by example. So I know you have to leave at 10, but I'm hoping that you can stay, and hopefully there will be some questions particularly. Ambassador Malcora, you have this terrific new initiative, and you are trying, of course, as Ambassador Stova mentioned, to have more women throughout the better gender equality throughout the Secretariat. And that's more the administration of the UN, and of course we're concerned about that, but we are particularly interested in how we can advance the GA, the General Assembly, to become more gender equal.
Well, thank you, Patty. And let me start by thanking you and all the organizers for this opportunity. It's great to have the chance to speak to parliamentarians throughout the world. You represent the peoples, so really is at the heart of the ones who come from the multilateral system like I do to speak to parliamentarians. And thanks to my colleagues, Senator Griffroy and my dear friend Lachi Sarah, for joining in this panel. First of all, it is true that it is for member states to decide who represents them in the General Assembly. There is no chance for anyone. It's a sovereign decision by a member state. But member states are not only the executive, and that's where I think the role of the parliamentarians becomes central. You know, we founded this group of women, this GWL Voices, the group of women that I preside over, 4 years ago. And let me tell you, it was founded by three former UN senior officials, Helen Clark from New Zealand, former Prime Minister of New Zealand and former UNDP administrator, Irina Bokova, who was the Director General of UNESCO, and myself. I was the Chief of Staff of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. And why did we come together? We competed to be Secretary General of the United Nations. Last time around, when Antonio Guterres was chosen, there were 13 candidates to become Secretary General, 7 women, 6 men. And it was a time for women. Everybody spoke about that. In the end, it was Antonio who got it, a good friend, very able person, but it was a man, not a woman. So we missed a chance again. And 3 of us decided that it was good time to prove that we had competed, that we could also work together on 2 very important issues: strengthening the multilateral system and the rights of women. And we have those 2 associated because we believe that if the multilateral system is weakened, and we think it's been weakened in these days, women have less chance to keep their rights up front. So that's where we came together. And one of the things we have done is started to produce data around the question of women representation. We have issued a report early in the year that shows, and let me give you one piece of data regarding the General Assembly. The General Assembly was established in 1945 when the UN started, when the UN was founded, when the charter was signed. Since then until now, only 4 times a woman was at the helm of the General Assembly, presided over the General Assembly. It is just amazing. And that is a correlation between what happens in the representation of the General Assembly and what happens at the highest level of the General Assembly, which is the presidency. That proves that member states speak about women's rights and about women having equal access, but they don't deliver, at least they do not deliver regarding the UN and the General Assembly. They not only do not deliver regarding their representatives, and the figures have been given, and I'm not going to belabor on that. They also do not deliver when they produce candidates for senior position in the United Nations. It is a struggle, and I have had that struggle being Chief of Staff, to get women in the final round of selection provided by member states. So yes, there is a need. Yes, parliamentarians can play a role. Parliamentarians can raise this issue at the highest level. I will have to say that I disagree with Senator Griffith when he said that he didn't believe in quotas. I think we need to have propositive decisions. You know, just trying hard is not good enough. And we have seen the figures shown by, for example, the WEF on gender equality at large, and they're talking about the second half of next century to achieve gender equality. Just not acceptable. The ambassador said something very interesting. She said, the General Assembly represents humankind, and humanity is divided into, in fact, I will say, women are 50 plus and men are 50 less of what humanity is. So it is not acceptable to believe that it will take years and years and decades to achieve parity. So in my view, parliaments have to put pressure on the executive branch. There has to be positive policy regarding this, not only the representation on the General Assembly, but at large, representation of women at large. I think that the countries that have produced feminist foreign policies are starting to have this more at the center. I'm not saying that it's a prerequisite to have a feminist foreign policy, but that helps bring light to this issue. I also believe that it is a more complex question, and this goes to your point, Patty, on having been foreign minister. The career in foreign service is very challenging for women. And there is a need to have particular provisions to be enacted in order for women to have real equal opportunities in those careers. You know, often women have they have to move from one place to the other. How do you keep family together? How do you ensure that when a couple is integrated by both diplomats, things are enabled so that they can move around together? So there are a lot of provisions that need to be taken into account in order for women to move up the ladder in diplomacy, and in doing so, to have more in the base to produce candidates for different positions, including the General Assembly. So all in all, this is to say, I do not believe that this will come out of just gravity. Just the force of gravity will not produce this. This requires positive, enacting positive policies that make a difference. And those positive policies need to break these circles that exist. There are circles that, you know, are based on power, and people who have power that don't like to let go. So we need to do that. And in my view, parliaments should be at the center of producing those changes that will really put pressure on the circles of power to make a change.
Terrific. And one thing parliamentarians have is power and the ability to bring up these issues, whether it's in the House or the National Assembly or in committees, where they can even just ask the question, what is the policy of my country? What are the numbers, as the senator has done? What are the numbers on our ambassadors around the world? Oh, just being aware and the facts might spur some questions and some change, which is what we hope to have. We do have an opportunity for questions and comments, commitments to make a difference. I will, if you want to raise a question or make a comment, if you could press your hand signal, you can wave at me, but that will make it harder. I do see the member from Jordan, who's a member of the executive of our committee, Mr. Benny Yassin, who has a lot of experience in UN circles as well. I'm going to ask you to unmute and to pose your question or comment.
Thank you so much, Patty, and so thank you so much for our great speakers this afternoon here in Jordan. Actually, I'm very happy to join this very important meeting. We are raising a critical subject that in Jordan we are really giving that issue a very importance, especially during the last year from our parliament decisions. So we made a lot of change in our constitution and our regulations, a lot of things actually, to be quite true that we are supporting women in different issues. It was on the top level actually, and in different aspects, in the parliament as well as in the government and as a diplomat. There were some good steps after then practically. I think I mentioned one day that last year there were 12 new diplomats in our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 8 out of the 12 were ladies, female. which is very, very critical. And I agree that we don't have that big number of female ambassadors, actually. And here I'm talking from my good experience since I was the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But by the same token, we are so happy that and not the last ambassador at the UN, the one before was a lady, and the one before also was a lady who's now, one of them now is our ambassador to Washington, D.C. And the other one is still working at the UN headquarters over there. So we have that good experience. I agree with all the comments that there must be a lot of power to push the executive authorities for much more involvement in such an issues. It's very, very critical, actually. But the point which I would like to mention, during my service as Secretary General to our Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was holding a lot of things with the Jordanian ambassadors as well as with the foreign ambassadors. And I was so glad, so happy to have that great friendship with so many female ambassadors. And I realized during that time, they are doing very, very diplomat and political subjects as I can say sometimes much better than the others. So I am supporting that on our team, we have to put much more pressure on our governments and executive power to do a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beni Yassin. Je pense que j'ai le sénateur du Canada, Monsieur Forrest, Senator Forrest. Est-ce que vous êtes là? Senator Forrest. La parole, c'est à vous.
Yes, you have the floor. Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Is it okay? Well, I think that women's representation is essential. As a chair of towns and municipalities in Quebec, I worked a lot on that. I wanted to have more women represented. And as far as the UN are concerned, this is not only about elections. And I think that goals must be set, and they need to raise awareness among all countries so that MPs can pressure the executive and make sure that there is more equity in terms of selection processes, election to senior posts, or entry level. But the fact that there is a selection process means that we can have an influence on that. I think that we have to seize the opportunity to raise awareness in our own parliaments. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Senator. And now a senator from Thailand, Senator Ratanavich. I missed one. Thank you.
Thank you. Just like to add to the comments from the speakers. In Thailand, talking about the diplomacy, the diplomats in our embassy around the world now composing of, I would say, 70% of female. And the ambassador may be less than that, but in the future, I would say that the ambassador from Thailand around the world will be even more female than male. Now back to the parliament. In the Senate, which I'm a member, there are about 10% of female, 26 out of 250. In the parliament at the Congress side, I would say there will be around 10 to 12% out of 500 MPs. But we will have election in 10 days from now, on the 14th of May, for the House of Representatives. I would say I saw a lot of female candidates, and they are have potential to be elected. So I would say that the next House of Representatives will compose of maybe 15 to 20% of female representatives. Just like to add to the comments from the speaker. Thank you so much.
Well, from your lips to God's ear, we'll have more women in the Thai parliament. But certainly, we do need those critical numbers, and all the studies show you need at least 30% to really have an impact. It is a very lonely place to be one of the 10 in the room, and it makes your job that much harder if there is not at least some number. And it's hard to aspire to be a member of parliament or to be an ambassador if you've never seen one who is of your gender. So I wish you the people of Thailand, all good work there. The chair, thank you. The chair of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians and a member of our Standing Committee Bureau is Cynthia Lopez Castro, and I'll now turn to you for a couple minutes.
Thank you so much, Paddy. I'm very pleased to be here in this forum. Susanna, congratulations for your exposition. It was great. And well, in the Women's Forum Parliamentarians of the IPU, we are working very hard to try to have more representation of women in parliament. So we are working very hard in the representation of women in parliaments and to try to have sometimes quotas to have a parity and equal opportunities for women. But on diplomats, I think that it's a big challenge, what you were talking about. We need to promote more bills to have a parity in diplomats. For example, I'm a Mexican parliament, and in my country, that is, we have parity in the Congress, we have parity in the Senate, in the Congress, we have parity in all levels. I think we are missing, and when I was listening to you, I was thinking that I need to present a bill this period to promote to have parity in the diplomats, because in Mexico we have in the executive, in the legislative, in all the judicial power, in the 3 levels, in the state, in the municipal, and in the federal. So we are doing very good in equal representation, but I think it's a big challenge and we are forgetting diplomats. And maybe because we are in politics and we are in the Congress, we are sometimes not very connected or very linked with the diplomatic representation. I don't want to say forgot, but maybe we just start working in every day, try to promote quotas or representation in the government level, but I think that we are not thinking as a priority the diplomatic body. So I will, after this forum, I thank you so much, Paddy, that you organize, and we are doing a great job in the UN committee of the IPU also. So I will promote, I will thank you so much if you can send me by the chat or maybe send me your email if you have some examples of countries that are doing very well in diplomats gender equality representation. So, well, I will try to put this topic in all our forums in the Women's Forum and also with the parliamentarians. And if you can share me also information, I will be sharing in our WhatsApp group of Women IPU that I also will put it here in the chat. And I think that we have a big challenge and a big commitment with the diplomatic representation in our country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. We do have a question or comment from Afghanistan. I think it's going to be posed by a staff member because for English language services. Sir?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. May I ask the Deputy Speaker, he told me that to raise his question. He is Muhammad Alam Izidyar, the Deputy Speaker of the Senate. He's available here. The question is that all of the struggle here is to ensure the gender equality in the General Assembly of the UN, and the parliamentarians are supposed to push this national-wise as a national agenda. And the philosophy behind of this is not only increasing the number of the female diplomats in the UN General Assembly, but there is like to ensure the voice for the for the female of the globe, and to ensure a proper advocacy by these female diplomats over there. So the question is that, like whether the current number, whether it's below the 50% or whether it is close to 50%, how much they have struggled to make a stronger voice, or to raise the concerns of the females of Afghan who are for next to almost 2 years. They are deprived of all of their basic human rights in Afghanistan, like the tangible discussions and advocacy made by these existing female diplomats within the General Assembly of the UN. So this is the question, and we hope we hear a concrete response to ensure the hopes of the population of Afghanistan.
Thank you very much. Of course, it's not up to women only to raise issues related to women's work, but I'll let the others. I'll take one last comment from, or question from another member of our executive of the IPU Bureau on UN Affairs, Ernesto Bustamante. The floor is yours.
Yes. Hello, Patty. Thank you very much. Greetings to everybody in the room. In Peru, we have 39% women participation in Congress. And that is not achieved through a quota system. Well, there is a quota system, but when you run for office, but then the elector has the opportunity to punch the name of the person he or she wants to vote for. So actually, the 38% is a number mandated by the people of Peru. So I think that has a greater value than a quota-based system. So we're happy to have 39% women. All of them are as valuable as the men that are in the current Congress, and it's the highest number ever we've had in Peru. Now, regarding the participation in the diplomatic world, unfortunately, the problem there is a matter of time. If you look at the young members of the diplomatic corps, yeah, then you have parity. There you can see, 40, 50% of the young diplomatic members are female. But if you look at the senior level members, say ambassadors, there's not that many women to choose from, and that's just a matter of the fact that in the past, many women were not, let's say, interested or enticed to go into diplomacy. So. In the case of members of the executive, yes, I mean, with the strike of a pen, you can immediately change the number of women in the cabinet from 30, 40, or 50 to 90 or 100% if we wanted. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a true representation of women. And that can only come from the people. So I believe that if the country has a lower number than expected or than considered or deemed appropriate of women, we should just work with the people, work with the electorate, because they are the ones that in the end are going to signal who gets elected. I don't think it is very valuable to say that we have achieved 50-50 parity. If that is done through quotas, I don't think it is as valuable as something that is being achieved over time with the participation of the voter. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move to two quick comments, and then I really need to make sure that we give some time to our special guests to respond, because I know there's going to be some responses. I do see Switzerland, and then I see Alexandra from Cyprus, and I've closed the list at this point. So over to you, Switzerland. I'm not sure who's speaking. Switzerland? You just need to unmute, sorry. It's, I think it's Mr. Worley. Wait.
Now, can you hear me? I think this is okay. Good morning, Patty, Laurent Verny from Switzerland. I'm with Laurence Fermadriel, National Council. We are both members of the delegation to the IPU. I had the chance to chair the UN Affairs Committee. It is a pleasure to see you all in good health. Maybe a few words about the situation in Switzerland. In Switzerland, we are quite proud because our representative to the UN is a woman, and she has been chairing the Security Council for the last 2 days, or since 2 days. And this is the first time that Switzerland can chair the Security Council. And we are very, very proud because this is a woman. The woman is chairing that council. I wanted to tell you that we have an actual policy, a policy to promote the representation of women in diplomacy. We have almost reached a total parity in the diplomatic corps in Switzerland. We even have more women than men as far as local staff is concerned. And as I was saying, we have more women in local staff. I wanted to put it that way because we are very happy because in the Swiss federal government, we have Secretary of States, and these Secretary of States are also women. Beyond the data, beyond the figures that we have, they are important, but we have to go beyond that. What are these people doing? What are their responsibilities? To be straightforward, we can have many women and have many women in a service, but you know, what about their responsibilities? Maybe they do not have top management responsibilities or management responsibilities. So we have to go beyond figures. We need more detailed statistics to exactly know where we are, you know, because it's like in a restaurant, you may have many women attending customers, but maybe the most important thing is that the chef is a woman, you know, and this is when we will respect the responsibilities that women can have as well as men. And this is the challenge we are facing. We have to go beyond figures, beyond quotas, because you know, maybe the numbers that we have are quite nice, but we need more detailed information, and that's what we are paying attention to in Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurent. And indeed, your president is doing a very good job already. The member for Cyprus, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I heard everything that was said and the reservations about quotas, but without quotas, some countries will never change. So in Cyprus, all the women organizations, we are very much pressing for quotas because unfortunately, we are only 14% in the parliament. Only 13 out of 37 head of missions are women. And in the ministerial council, although we have seen an increase of women because presidential candidates, they promise to have more women, still it's only 30-something%. So I believe that it will never change. And I calculated, according to the index of the European Union on equality, Cyprus will need another 100 years before we have parity. So in my opinion, two things we have to do. First of all, at least on the electoral lists, we should have an equal number of women, first of all, so that the voters, they can have the same choice between women and men, the equal number. And secondly, all the financial support given to parties and to presidential candidates, it should be linked with the democracy index. How many women do they have in the bureau, in the political organs of the party, everywhere? Because we are talking, and nothing is being changed. Actually, sometimes we have setups. It's a very big disappointment for women, and we have seen a lot of policies being passed through, and then we discover that the impact on women is going to be negative. So yes, I believe that we should have women. We should have also women in peace processes. It's the UN resolution 3515. For us, it's very important because we have a problem in Cyprus to solve, and we don't have women, a lot of women in the peace process. That's why we are in this mess. So I believe that the UN, they should show the way. They should, next time, they should elect a woman as general secretary, and they should force countries at least every 2 periods to have a woman head of the mission in the UN. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Alessandra Wander wanted to get in for a quick 1 minute, and then we really are going to the final comments from our ambassadors and the chair.
Thank you, Patty. Just 1 minute. I just want to go back to a comment that Ambassador Marcora made that I think is my takeaway for this group. When she said member states control the UN, but member states also include parliaments. So we have to be very clear that, which is the reason why IPU is here at the UN, that foreign affairs are not, or no longer, the exclusive preserve of the executive branch. And that even though a process thus far has been under the strict control of the executive, nothing should prevent a parliament from exercising oversight of that process to ask questions and even change the law, change the process. I mean, the people in control in each country is actually the parliament at the end of the day, because we pass the law. So we can actually change the rules up to a certain extent. So that's a very important process. The other thing I really want to, going back to also the comment from Ambassador Marcora, but also now Switzerland, beyond numbers, there is a qualitative change that women make at the UN, not only in the secretariat, but also in the governing bodies. And the question for me to Ms. Marcora is if she could elaborate on this, because it's also in the latest report of the high-level advisory board on effective multilateralism, that gender equality is key to effective multilateralism. So if maybe, and we have the report for you, if you want, we can send to you afterwards. If Ms. Marcora could maybe say 2 words about this, will be very useful. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. And our next briefing will be about that report. So I'll turn first to Ms. Marcora and then to, is that going to be okay, Ambassador Stova?
I need to chair a meeting at 10 o'clock.
Is that okay?
So
let her go first. Let her go
Perfect.
first, please.
Thank you.
All right. This was a very interesting discussion. I think we are all on the same page. Yes, we understand that the situation is not rosy, and we know that something has to be done. The lucky part is that most parliaments have instruments and the power to do it. So it's in a way up to you nationally to do the job. And I was going to ask you if you have statistics on how many chairs of foreign policy committees are women in parliaments. That would be interesting to hear, because that would also replicate probably the model we're seeing everywhere. Another comment I wanted to make is to illustrate that even the countries with most progressive foreign policy, feminist policies are not globally not doing so well. Ms. Marcora mentioned that we have 4 presidents of the General Assembly that have been women for the last 77 years. If I ask you to guess which regions they come from, you probably won't guess. It's not logical, but they're all from the global south.
Absolutely.
All of them, all 4. So there is not a single one that has been there from Europe or from countries that are considered progressive. And again, it is up to member states to decide how to promote women and to actually put the the basis for and allow women to enter, but it is a whole of society approach. It shouldn't be women asking for that. It should be a whole, a man need to be convinced that women have a place and then they actually contribute to society. So that's a battle that we need to fight together. And there was a question on Afghani women. I can tell you that at the moment, this is a top priority for the UN. All efforts are tailored towards trying to see what and how Afghani women can be helped. Unfortunately, the situation is not at all easy. It's quite challenging to actually see how changes on the ground can be made, given the fact that we have a regime that is not conducive and not cooperative and doesn't allow its own women to progress. So we feel for the Afghani women on a daily basis. There have been tremendous amounts of meetings around that and raising awareness and actually action on the ground on the humanitarian front alone. So they're not left alone. It's just extremely difficult to provide support. And with that, I end and I'll give it to the floor to Ms. Malkora to continue.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Stova.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I'm fully aware that we have only 2 minutes left. First of all, this is not a women versus men, men versus women issue. This is an issue of society and societal representation. So I hear some of you suggesting that time is enough. I will pose to you, time will not solve the problem in an equitable manner. The case has been made that you need to feed into the pipeline in order to have choices. I will argue that the health system, which is absolutely overrepresented by women, not only in the base, but also at the doctor level, has very few women that lead the charge in the national health systems. So it's not enough to have a pipeline. You need to have the decision to make women be in charge, be at the helm. And that is not automatic. It doesn't happen automatically. So I will urge you to consider whatever means are available to put women at the center, because they represent more than half of society for that only reason, which is a reason good enough. And to work together, men and women, because with different perspectives, you can arrive to better solutions, particularly in peace processes, as was referred to, which is one of the things at the center of the United Nations, where the GA, the Security Council, and the Secretariat should work together. On Afghanistan is a very challenging problem, as the ambassador referred to. I think it's not only women ambassadors who are speaking about this, it's all ambassadors. We just had a decision by the Security Council, which is difficult these days regarding this very issue only a few days ago. The Secretary General just had a meeting with all envoys in Doha to discuss this very matter. So without any doubt, it's something that we cannot forget. There are other issues, other questions in other parts of the world that take the attention away from Afghanistan. We need to talk about this and raise this issue over and over again till we find a solution. So to finalize, I think we all agree that having women fully represented in different bodies, including the General Assembly, is positive. We don't necessarily agree on how to get there. I think there are nuances. I will put forward to you that the engagement by all parliaments is critical. And as I said at the beginning, parliaments are part of the states that are the sovereigns of the United Nations. And there was one last question that I honestly forgot. It was about the report, and you will be discussing that very, very, very soon. But I have read the report and I have seen what you referred to. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, and thank you for providing such leadership on this issue and so many. Senator Giffroy, do you have any final comments? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. No. So thank you very much all for your opinion, your thoughts. And yes, I knew that when I was saying that I'm not in favor for or a big fan of applying quota, that they will open discussion, of course. And that was, of course, also my my target to open the discussion. Because what I've heard here is that some good things. And I have been shocked when I have seen the figures of Belgium. 30% of the diplomats are female. That's not enough. It's only 10% are ambassadors. I don't know what is the reason. Yeah? Is it the framework around? Is that they don't have? I don't know. We have to figure it out. But it's also like Laurent from Swiss has said that what is a quantity? You can have 50 to 50, but if this 50% are female or not the highest positions, well, you know, that's not the same. Sometimes it's also good that you have also these biggest positions. And in Germany, they have in the administration of foreign affairs, they have a wall over there. And on this wall, they have put the 9 pictures of the most important ambassadors. You know, for example, that you say, okay, this country, this country, and this country are very important. And only the female they put it on. So they know that they have to be 9 and they put the female on. So this triggered the people because people said, okay, we have 9 very important ambassadors that we need. Ooh, there's only 2 or there's only 3 or there's only 4 or only 1 or only 5. So it's a lot about mentality. And that's also what Ms. Marcora has said. There is not one, let us say, golden bullet to solve the problem. It's about mentality, it's about procedures, it's about what we try to do. If you have a candidate, no, you have not one candidate, you have always 2 candidates, 1 female, 1 man, so that people can make a choice. Who is deciding for the final position, etc. So it's a lot of work, but in fact, I'm more interested in more detailed figures, but also to know how it comes. So that then it's more easier to find the ways to improve in the future to get this target of the SDG 5 where we talk about the gender equality. So I was very happy to open the debate by teasing you a little bit about applying the quota, but I think that we can do it further on in the next 4th committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. And of course, it is, as people have said, it's about making sure that there is gender equality because the world has gender equality. But it's also about the topics that are discussed by men and women and about the processes, which we didn't really cover much. But there is one committee that's rather critical at the UN, and it has a history of meeting right until the final hour on December 31st. And the only time I know that it ever was shorter than that was when it was chaired by a woman, and it ended about a week early, so people could actually have a break over the holidays, the New York holidays. And it was a woman saying, no one deserves and needs to work at this pace all through the night, right until the 11th hour. On December 31st, and she got it done. So maybe that will make a change too, is the processes when people have different priorities about how they want to spend their time. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here. I think it's been really helpful for even having this discussion. I can hear that many of you have found out about your own foreign affairs departments, and I can envision there's going to be some really interesting discussions in houses right around the world and in committees, and hopefully we'll see the results of that good work. Ambassador Marcora, you're just always an inspiration, and I'm so thrilled that you could help us out in Manama on short notice and get us a video to kick off this work that our committee is doing. And we look forward to continuing to work with you on ensuring the voices of the people are represented. So thank you all, and I wish you good luck in your day, and keep on working hard. Thank you.